We begin this morning, though, with the economy and today's all-important interest rate decision by the Federal Reserve.
Wall Street expects the Fed to raise rates by 3/4 of a point as it tries to bring down the decade's high inflation, which is making just about everything you pay for more expensive. This also comes against the backdrop of slowing economic activity and concerns that a rate hike could move the U.S. economy into a recession. Just yesterday, the International Monetary Fund slashed its global growth forecast for this year and the next, calling the outlook, quote, gloomy and uncertain. For the U.S., the IMF lowered its GDP outlook in 2022 by more than a point to just 2.3%. Here's the organization's chief economist explaining the reasons behind those downgrades.
The outlook has darkened significantly since April. The world may soon be teetering on the edge of a global recession. Many of the downside risks flagged in our April World Economic Outlook have begun to materialize. Higher than expected inflation, especially in the United States and major European economies, is triggering a tightening of global financial conditions. China's slowdown has been worse than anticipated amid COVID-19 outbreaks and lockdowns, and there have been further negative spillovers from the war in Ukraine.
So what does all this mean for your wallet? We're going to hear from MSNBC anchor Lindsay Reiser about how rising rates could impact you if you're in the market for a car. But first, let's bring in Farnoosh Torabi. She is CNET's money editor at large. Farnoosh, good to have you with us. So let's start off with the Fed. Do you think it's right for the central bank to hike rates so aggressively if, as many are predicting, we're heading toward a sharp slowdown in economic growth?
Good morning. Yes, I think the Fed is on the right course. I mean, look, we have inflation at a level we haven't seen in 40 years, 9.1%. I think our economy can absorb this interest rate hike. And as Jerome Powell has said, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell has said, this is just part of a bigger plan to create a soft landing for the economy. The hope that the Fed's sort of two-part job is to tame inflation, but also do it in such a way where it doesn't cripple our economy. Now, this is going to be a big rate hike, and we have 3 more subsequent meetings in 2022. Whether or not the Fed's going to take as much of an aggressive stance in those meetings is to be determined. But Powell has indicated that this is probably going to be the last meeting where it's going to be as aggressive as this. 3/4 of a rate hike, of a point hike, is historic. To do that twice in a row now hasn't happened in a very long time. He doesn't think it's going to become the norm this year.
As we just heard, the IMF thinks we're teetering on the edge of a global recession. Now, the technical definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, but the National Bureau of Economic Research defines it as a significant decline in economic activity that's spread across the economy and lasts more than a few months. And there's still some strong aspects of the economy right now. So where do you stand on this recession debate? Is that coming soon?
It's such a good question, but at the same time, I'm tired of this question. And if you ask the average American, 58% in a recent poll said, you know what, this feels like a recession. And by some measures, as a personal finance advocate, that to me is all that really matters at this point. If you are a government leader, if you're a policymaker, if you're a business owner, it's important to listen to how consumers are feeling as opposed to waiting for this technical definition. I will say this, if we say this week that we are in a recession because the second quarter GDP report is due out this week, and the NBER maybe has an early opinion on this, and they say, yes, we are in a recession, it will not surprise most Americans.
So for that 58% of Americans and really all Americans, what would a recession mean right now? What's your advice to people who are really navigating this time of uncertainty in the economy?
Well, the biggest challenge I think that all recessions create is job loss. And we're already seeing echoes of layoffs, especially in the tech sector. If you are in a particularly vulnerable sector like tech or e-commerce, we heard Shopify planning to lay off about 1,000 of its workforce, 10% of its labor force. I think this is the time to rein in the spending as best you can. If you have the luxury of a job right now with the ability to pay for your needs and save, then do save. Because as we've learned in previous recessions, cash is power. It allows you to buy time to sort of work out your next steps without an emotional charge. And I would also say, look at those credit card balances, any outstanding debt that you had with a variable interest rate. In other words, the rate could adjust higher. We know that that's probably going to mean more interest costs for you as the months and years and the year progresses. So prioritize your credit card balances, make 1 or 2 extra payments if you can towards the balance, minimum payments towards the balance, so that you don't have as much of an interest burden.
All right, some valuable advice. Farnoosh, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Now, if the Fed raises interest rates, that means the amount you pay for things like your car loan could go up. And we've also been talking, of course, about the limited supply when it comes to cars for months in the first place. That all means buying a new or even used car is more expensive than ever before. MSNBC anchor Lindsay Reiser joins us now outside a used car dealership in Jersey City, New Jersey. Hey, Lindsay, good morning. Good to see you. So how much are people paying each month on their car payments, and how have these interest rates been impacting them?
Well, Savannah, you mentioned it's really a double whammy for people right now. You have a lower supply for new and used cars because of the semiconductor shortage. And you also have at the same time these rising interest rates. So you're going to be paying more over the life of your loan. Let's break down some statistics. I talked to Edmunds and they found that the percentage of people right now who are committing to $1,000 monthly car payments is 13%. That is a record for them. Right now, you're looking at the cost here of what the life of a loan would cost you then versus now. So if we look at December of 2021, the interest rate was 3.85%. So let's say you wanted to get a car. Let's go ahead and create some controls here for us for this experiment, right? Let's say it's a 60-month loan, a $25,000 loan amount. So back in December, you would pay about $459 a month in that payment. Over the life of the loan, you would be paying about $2,500 in interest. But take a look now, July 2022, that interest rate is now at around 4.86. And look at how much you're paying. Okay, maybe every month it's not that much, but it adds up. So you're going to be paying about $10 a month extra. But over the life of the loan, that's about a difference of $687 over those 5 years, Savannah.
Yeah, not nothing at all. Now, Lindsay, also, as you said, you called it a double whammy. I love that. We've seen so many car manufacturers also talk about just low levels of inventory for their new vehicles because of the shortages for things like semiconductors, chips, these other raw materials needed to make cars. How's that issue contributing to higher costs for both new and used cars?
So an economist I talked to said it's all of these forces pushing in the same direction at the same time. So you have this semiconductor shortage. You have Feds raising rates. You have inflation. You have Putin's war in Ukraine, increasing gas prices. I talked to an insight analyst at Edmunds to see what's going on with these trends, and this is what she told me.
Right now, the predominant trend in the auto industry is really about low inventory, which for consumers means high prices. So the days of consumers being able to shop around, going into a dealer, having a plethora of choices of colors and options and different vehicles you can buy, it just doesn't exist right now. We've had a global inventory crunch.
So what does that mean, Savannah? It means you might not be able to haggle as much as you could before. It also means you're not going to see that wide selection that you used to, Savannah.
All right, Lindsay Reiser, thank you so much.
Now to the extreme weather. This morning, cities from coast to coast are recovering from deadly flooding and sweltering heat. In St. Louis, Missouri, state and federal aid is being dispatched after yesterday's flash floods killed at least one person there. The city received a record-breaking 9 inches of rainfall in 24 hours. Across the country, 31 million Americans are waking up to more heat alerts today. Parts of the Northwest and several South Central states are expected to hit the 90s and triple digits again. Seattle, which normally has mild weather, even in the summer, broke a record yesterday, coming in at 94 degrees. Portland also saw a record high of 102 yesterday.
Now the question is, when can we expect some relief?
From all of that, we're going to check in with meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Good to see you. And the extremes do continue today. We're looking at soaring temperatures into the 90s, into the triple digits once again for the Northwest, parts of the South Central states. And also we're looking at the chance for flash flooding through really through Friday and over the weekend. So taking a look at the heat alerts, we're looking at 31 million people impacted throughout the Northwest, Seattle, Portland, Medford, down to Reno. We're also looking at the South Central states, that ongoing heat. We've been tracking this for weeks and weeks. Oklahoma City, Shreveport, Memphis, you're under a heat alert as well, in Wilmington. So parts of North Carolina and South Carolina also seeing a heat advisory. Now, temperatures into the Northwest, we're into the triple digits once again. 108 by this afternoon in Medford. We broke records yesterday. We're going to break records once again in Oregon and also Washington. And this heat's going to continue for the next few days. So by the weekend, a little bit of relief. But before then, we're looking at temperatures into the triple digits. 111 in some spots in Monument on Friday. Temperatures right around 102 Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in Burns. And we continue to sizzle in the south. We're looking at temperatures into the triple digits for so many. You factor in that humidity, it remains so high. We're looking at feels like temperatures near 110 in some spots. And we'll feel like 110 in Tulsa, feeling like 109 in Memphis, feeling like 104 in Charlotte, and we're looking at the feels like temperature in San Antonio of 104. Now, in contrast, still feeling so good. We had a beautiful day yesterday in parts of the Northeast, starting to warm up a bit along the I-95 corridor into the Mid-Atlantic. But look at the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, into the interior parts of Northeast. Temperatures in the upper 70s, the low 80s, feeling a little bit like September in spots. 77 in Minneapolis today. Joe's dad's going to like it there. 82 in Pittsburgh, 81 in Buffalo, and 78 degrees in Portland. Then not too hot as we go throughout the next few days. D.C. temperatures right around normal on Saturday, 85, 83 on Sunday. Same story in Boston. Now, we do have a concern today once again for flooding. We have a flood watch. That's where you see the green in parts of the Ohio Valley, also the Central Appalachians. Unfortunately, seeing some very heavy rain in spots this morning. The atmosphere has so much moisture, and it's just continuing to unleash these torrential downpours. And that's because we have a stationary boundary. So it's sort of like car trains over the track, going over the same spots over and over again. Very slow-moving storms. So, you guys, we're going to watch the continued risk for flash flooding. That will be today, also tomorrow, Friday, into parts of the weekend. Back to you.
All right, a lot to watch, but definitely has broken a little bit here, a little bit cooler, finally. All right,
felt
thanks,
good yesterday.
Yeah. All right, turning now to another sign of the deep division between former President Trump and former Vice President Mike Pence. The two former running mates gave dueling speeches just hours apart and only a few blocks away from each other in Washington. Both hinted at different futures for the Republican Party. While the former president kept his focus on the January 6th attack on the Capitol, Pence chose to hone in on what's next for Republicans. Take a listen.
So I don't know that our movement is that divided. I don't know that the president and I differ on issues. But we may differ on focus. I truly do believe that elections are about the future. I think the time has come for us to offer a bold, positive agenda to bring America back.
Now, neither man has yet declared they are running for president in 2024, but both are reportedly laying the groundwork.
New this morning, NBC News has learned the Department of Justice is investigating former President Trump's actions leading up to January 6th as part of its criminal probe of efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. That's according to an administration official familiar with the investigation. Now, before that announcement, NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt spoke exclusively with Attorney General Merrick Garland here in D.C. to find out where things stand.
With outside pressure mounting for indictments of President Trump and some of his inner circle, I sat down with Attorney General Merrick Garland for an exclusive interview. The AG dismissing accusations his office hasn't moved swiftly enough to build cases against those near the top of the ladder, and telling me concerns over further tearing the country apart would not deter his office from holding those criminally responsible accountable.
Let's start off and talk about January 6th. We've just watched weeks of some pretty horrific testimony about what led up to January 6th and what happened that day. Just as an American, can you tell me what your impression was of what we heard?
It's an important part of democracy that every American recognizes the truth of what happened on January 6th and in the time surrounding it. I think that this is an important part that we not downgrade or suppress how important that day was. And I think that the hearings did an extremely good job of reminding us, and for people who didn't know in the first place, telling us how important that day was and what a risk it meant for our democracy.
Is the committee offering you anything in terms of an informal roadmap? Are you learning things you didn't know?
The Justice Department has been doing the most wide-ranging investigation in its history, and the committee is doing an enormously wide-ranging investigation as well. It is inevitable that there will be things that they find before we have found them, and is inevitable that there will be things we find that they haven't found. But the Justice Department has, from the beginning, been moving urgently to learn everything we can about this period and to bring to justice everybody who's criminally responsible for interfering with the peaceful transfer of power from one administration to another, which is the fundamental element of our democracy.
You said you're moving quickly at this. There's been a lot of criticism, a lot of pressure that the DOJ is kind of behind the power curve here, behind the committee, not moving quickly enough on what appears to be solid evidence in some cases.
As I said, we have been moving urgently since the very beginning. We have a huge number of prosecutors and agents working on these cases. It is inevitable in this kind of investigation that there will be speculation about what we are doing, who we are investigating, what our theories are. The reason there is this speculation and uncertainty is that a fundamental tenet of what we do as prosecutors and investigators is to do it outside of the public eye. We do that for two important reasons. One is to protect the civil liberties of people and events that we're investigating, and the second is to ensure the success and the integrity of our investigation.
Would a criminal referral from the committee carry a lot of weight? Would it be welcomed by the Department of Justice?
So I think that's totally up to the committee. We will have the evidence that the committee has presented, and whatever evidence it gives us. I don't think that the nature of how they style, the manner in which information is provided, is of particular significance from any legal point of view. That's not to downgrade it or disparage it. It's just that that's not the issue here. We have our own investigation pursuing through the principles of prosecution.
You said in no uncertain terms the other day that no one is above the law. That said, the indictment of a former president, of perhaps candidate for president, would arguably tear the country apart. Is that your concern as you make your decision down the road here? Do you have to think about things like that?
Look, we pursue justice without fear or favor. We intend to hold anyone who was criminally responsible for the events surrounding January 6th, for any attempt to interfere with the lawful transfer of power from one administration to another, accountable. That's what we do. We don't pay any attention to other issues with respect to that.
So if Donald Trump were to become a candidate for president again, that would not change your schedule or how you move forward or don't move forward?
Say again that we will hold accountable anyone who was criminally responsible for attempting to interfere with the legitimate, lawful transfer of power from one administration to the next.
How is your department dealing with the pressure? Every day you wake up, there's a column in a newspaper talking about what you will do and when you will do it.
The only pressure that I, or my prosecutors, or the agents feel is the pressure to do the right thing. That's the only way we can pursue the rule of law. That's the only way we can keep the confidence of the American people in the rule of law, which is an essential part of our democratic system.
I caught up with the Attorney General in Martinsburg, West Virginia, as he toured the National Tracing Center. This is where the ATF tracks the firearms used in crimes, a process still done using mostly paper records. Today, agents showed the AG how a small piece of plastic can transform a semi-automatic rifle into a military-grade assault weapon.
I want to ask you about mass shootings. We've seen far too many, and some of them with people with strong right-wing or extremist philosophies. How do you intercept those people before they shoot?
This is the most difficult question in a democracy. We have to respect the First Amendment. We can't just troll the internet looking what everybody in the country is doing, but we have joint terrorism task forces, which evaluate both foreign and domestic terrorists and domestic violent extremists, including racially motivated violent extremists.
But it's so frustrating that after the fact, we open up these social media sites and we see the ticking time bomb that has now exploded. It's got to be disheartening.
This is an incredibly worrisome thing, and what we just saw here in Martinsburg is the risk that these very cheap devices that can be made at home that can transform a semi-automatic rifle or a semi-automatic pistol into
You just saw a demonstration of that.
That's right.
For a few cents, a semi-automatic weapon became a machine gun, essentially.
Exactly. So
I also asked the Attorney General about Americans' concerns over rising crime.
They're concerned about their safety, and they want to make sure that law enforcement is up to the task. Is rising crime a crisis in this country?
Look, I think violent crime is a matter of considerable concern to the country and to the Justice Department, as it should be. Communities have to trust us. They have to trust law enforcement. For that reason, we're pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into police departments and into communities in a joint effort to battle violent crime together.
Our thanks to Lester Holt for that exclusive newsmaking interview.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.